Arkansas border with a lifelong plan. Took the oath like his old man, then turned around proud and shook his hand. L.A. kid stood right behind, took a deep breath and signed on the line, while tears streamed from his mama's eyes. They hopped right up on that Greyhound bus, swapping stories. They laughed and cussed, and they talked about the girls that they loved. They made a pact, shined up their boots, got the call before it hit the news. No clue what they were about to do. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, good evening. This is the Finish This Fight Hour, 7 p.m., Tuesday night, September the 30th. I just had a birthday about a week ago, a little over that. Guys, I missed you. I was not here a lot last week. Was in Chicago fighting off Antifa. Yo, Chicago's a whole different spot. You know, now I live in the communist capital of Florida in Broward County, and I kind of thought I knew a little bit about leftism, but I didn't really understand. Was up with Stuart Rhodes last week doing a show for a PAC. Y'all, we got shut down 3 times. 3 different venues canceled because the Antifa or whoever the heck they are was calling and complaining. In fact, they showed up an hour after we left the last one, and the guy was confirmed. He's like, man, don't worry about it. I'm not even going to answer my phone. They're going to call. They showed up and started threatening. What kind of world we living in? I don't know. But, hey, we got a great show tonight. I got a brand new friend, and I got one that's a little bit older. And I mean that with all due respect, Craig Sawyer. We're going to bring in some guys. Let me make some introductions here real quick. We have let me just change locations because I'd like to be in the center. There we go. On this side, we got Heartland Journal, Steve Abramowicz. He's out of, I guess, Nashville now, or in that area. Actually, Franklin. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Franklin is where I recorded my first single, a song called Freedom. And in just a minute, I want you to tell us about who you are, Steve, and what's going on. Then on the other side, brother, look, I got 3 words for you. Just for men.
No, I'm going to let it go, man. I got to let it go.
And I feel like I can say that safely because we're 3 time zones apart. And by the time you find me, you'll forget I ever even said it.
Hey, look, man, it can turn gray as long as it doesn't turn loose.
That was not very nice. Craig, love you, brother. Thanks for coming back on. We're going to have a chat tonight right up your alley. But first, let me talk with Steve. Steve, you come from a long line of rednecks or just something similar to that. Let's talk about where you come from. You were a West Coast guy for quite a while, right?
Yes, I come from a long line of Eastern European rednecks. We would have been considered that back in the ancient days before World War II. But most recently, Seattle. It's funny that you bring up Antifa. My entire media presence has all been a spin out of Antifa, a lot like Gavin McInnes or Andrew Breitbart. And prior to that, I was born and raised California. So I have deep roots in the left coast and can tell you a red state when they say they're a red state, if they are or not, because I saw it all creep in and I know a thing or two about their tricks and their antics. It's amazing to me, actually, that they finally, after all these many years of me being the Paul Revere, Donald Trump decided now to make them domestic terrorists, long overdue. And I just really enjoy watching the TikToks of them getting thrown to the ground and bear-based and all the rest, because it's been such a pain. And some of the journalists I've had on my staff over the years have been assaulted and harassed and doxxed and chased away with machetes, believe it or not. And the world didn't know. but now they do. And my mission is not yet accomplished, but I was there at the creation of it.
Well, let's talk about that because your media company, what exactly do you do? Tell us about Heartland Journal, who you are and what you took over and what you guys are doing over there in Franklin.
Okay, so heartlandjournal.com is my hub. It was rebranded from what was called the Mill Creek View. And so a little corner of Washington State and a little corner of America was a little town called Mill Creek, which was like a village almost. And so I had, long story short, during COVID, we moved because Seattle, King County was so crazy. We moved to Snohomish County North, which was a more conservative area, let's just say. And I brought the kids with me. And so during COVID, the only job that was available for my daughter was delivering a newspaper called the Mill Creek View, this hometown newspaper that had been around since 1992, started by 82nd Airborne veteran who moved out from Michigan way back when and started this institution. But he passed away during COVID, not of COVID, but with COVID. His wife was not allowed her visitation rights because the hospital Providence was insane and they were doing all the things that you've heard about ever since very early on. And so I got activated. And so I got a call one night that said, "Hey, come to dinner. We want to ask you a question." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Fred passed away." And I said, "Oh no, that's terrible." And I had asked, his young wife had said, "What do you want to do, Fred, if something happens to you with the newspaper?" And she said, "Call Steve." And I said, "Why?" Well, why do I have to do that? But during the course of my daughter having this job since she was 15, that means I had a job because I could drive and I would take her from route to route so she could walk us off. So long story short, I know it's rambling, but it's interesting. I got to know him a little bit. I'd pick up her checks. I'd drop off the extra paper. I'd go back and get the two we didn't go and then go take them out. And I guess he liked what I had to say because it was a sticker on the window said, "I miss Reagan." And so I knew right out of the gate, veteran, Republican newspaper up against the Seattle Times, this ridiculous funded liberal rag, and of course the local ones, Linwood Times and Everett Herald. This was the only voice. And so I did take it over because the Republicans who were running for Congress and city council and all the rest during that year, November of, if you remember correctly, nobody would talk to them. So I did. So I even started another paper called Snohomish View in a more conservative area just to do this. And then I brought it into the 21st century, started the podcast, started the website, started the e-newsletter, and it was all still being delivered by hand by kids door to door in the neighborhood for free. And 5 years later now, I'm still the editor and contributor and founder of now what's called the heartlandjournal.com.
Well, that's cool, man. And we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about that and what kind of reach you've got and what you've been tackling. Because I just found out you kind of got yourself in a little hot water not too long ago. And that brings in Craig Sawyer. Craig, you've got some, there's some crossover here that I didn't know completely about until about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. But let's talk about Craig. You've been with me on this show a couple of times. We did the Finish This Fight, Diary of a Pissed Off American Soldier together. Got a chance to introduce Craig Sawyer. It's not like you need to be introduced, honestly, brother. But SEAL Team 6, I think, background. You were in Navy SEAL, came out of that. You've been a federal officer. Let's talk, Craig. What'd you do?
I broke everything. I hurt bad guys and broke their stuff. Now I fight for children, and that's really all that matters. You know, I was in this Marine Corps, SEAL teams, the federal law enforcement. Then I did high threat mobile security for our federal government, Department of State and Intelligence community for about another 7 years. And then I did film and television work increasingly. And I started getting into counter poaching and stuff like that. And I started learning how to use media to right a wrong that the public wasn't really aware of. And that's when I learned about child trafficking and decided to make a documentary to expose it and then go live my happy life, having exposed a bad thing so that the people could take action against it. And it wasn't that simple. And I realized this is a world where the wicked kind of run things and the rest of the people kind of don't want to be bothered with fixing anything.
Isn't
And
that
they kind of don't care about the children as much as you think that they would. And so we've been just running joint sting operations with federal, state, and local law enforcement against the predators, arresting them, running all kinds of training programs and TV show, radio show, and whatever public speaking events to try to just get the word out to the populace and to empower them with the knowledge of what's going on, just so that we can all protect our children and make it a safe USA for the little ones the way that it always should have been. But clearly right now is not. So that's what I set out to do. That's what we've been doing now. It's 8 years. And I still hope and pray that the federal government really starts making war on the child trafficking so that I can go skip off to the beach and retire and be an old man.
Dude, I think you look good on the beach, honestly, but you said a mouthful there, my friend. You breaking things and hurting people and all that, and then came into the world
bad guys.
Yeah, bad, and then came into the world of rescuing children from bad guys. The thing that hits my ears, that turns into hitting my heart, was when you find out there's so many people that really don't care as much as what they say they do. And I found that coming into this fight a few years ago. I call it complacency, and it may be deeper than that. I think we're seeing things right now. And, you know, you and I've had some deep talks, Craig, and I've said, and you've agreed, and I've agreed with you. I think we're in a spiritual battle unlike anything that's probably been seen by anybody alive right now. Maybe not ever, but by anybody alive right now. And I feel that I've seen that spiritual battle cross over into the physical a few weeks ago, when the Charlie Kirk thing was seen by millions and millions and millions of people, and not just the assassination. Whatever you think it was what was following the demonic manifestation of thousands and thousands and thousands of people celebrating that death. What are your thoughts on that, brother?
Well, that brand of seething hatred against someone that they never met, and someone who in 99% of the cases that I'm aware of didn't even say what they are told that he said. He's a racist, he's a misogynist, he's all these ist things that comes from a specific group of people who craft those word narratives and to manipulate the populace. It's interesting to me to go back and say, well, if you take it in context, is that really what he said? And it's the answer is no. And so my concern is that we, the American people, are too easy to manipulate and say, you know, Glenn Baker said a horrible thing, and take something that you may have, those words may have come out of your mouth, but there was a specific context in which that made sense to say those words. But if it's just taken as a 2 or 3 second snapshot, he said a horrible word, and then throw that at a group of the populace and have them just come to complete maniacal hatred. To me, that's a remarkable and fascinating control technique that I would love it if we weren't that easily played.
That's scary to me.
It's shockingly effective, and I've witnessed it. I'm observing it being perpetrated again and again and again, and whole hordes of people hate people for things that said things that they never said. And it's disappointing, but it's kind of creepy too, because it's not normal, right? There's so much spin and control and manipulation of delivering it a certain way repeatedly, like the process of conditioning a populace to behave a certain way is become they've mastered it, really. I mean, it's disturbing for me to witness people that believe things that I know aren't true, and that you can go back and listen to the whole conversations and hear aren't true. So that to me is that level of control, when it's abused, is just utterly destructive. So I think that's the biggest thing about all this for me. Is I'm like, wow, entire segments of our populace can be programmed and turned against each other.
And see, that blows my mind, Craig. And I believe you. I think you're absolutely right. And up until my awakening time, And we've talked about that in 2017, losing my freedom and realizing if it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. And all of a sudden I realized this is not the country that I fought for. God opened my mind up to be able to start absorbing what's really taking place. I was kind of one of those people. Now, you couldn't put hate into my heart like that, but I just believed my government had my best interest in mind. And they cared about me and they loved me and all this hooey that was just not true. But I'm thankful 20 plus years ago, probably 25 years ago, I turned the news channels off. And Steve, the reason I turned the news channels off is because I didn't like the negativity that was being force-fed and shoved down my throat. It had nothing to do with politics. It had nothing to do with truth. It just, I didn't like the negativity. Oh my gosh, it's the storm of the century. Or that was the most dangerous wreck I've ever seen. And the most maniacal, everything was fear. And I didn't want that going into my head. And I'm thankful for that because I think that deprogrammed me easier because I hadn't had years and years and years of that going on. Steve, you lived up there amongst the heart of that tribe. Talk to me about your thoughts on this, my friend.
Yeah, I think it was ground zero. It's funny that you said what you just said, because one of the first things that they used to do when psychiatry was a noble profession is they would ask somebody who's depressed, do you watch the evening news? And if they said, oh, yes, every day, I always watch it, O'Reilly, I always watch Hannity, whatever, turn it off, because it was super depressing. But that was before social media, which I just wrote an article last week called Tickling the Algorithm, which basically does find out what's trending. If it bleeds, it leads, and jump all over it. There's some on the right now and on the left influencers that will look every morning for whatever is the most salacious, most outrageous, most awful thing and create their entire day's worth of content on it, because when they click on it, they are making not hundreds of dollars, millions and millions of dollars, especially on TikTok. So when you see Britney Spears dancing with knives, it's not because she's crazy. Oh, the poor girl, she's probably, needs to be locked up or back into an intervention. No, she's actually brilliant. She doesn't have to go on tour anymore. She doesn't have to create a new record and be number one. She can basically make lots and lots of money per day just by dancing in her underwear without even saying anything. So when we see, like, say, Candace Owens decides to say that Charlie Kirk's conspiracy, this or that, the other thing, a whole month's worth of revenue is going there. So I call that tickling the algorithm. And where I got this idea was, I'm old enough to remember pre-social media. My newspaper was print newspaper, delivered door to door by kids. When I took it over, I'll admit, I took it a little bit further to the right than Fred. Fred was probably more center right because he knew his market, he knew the neighborhood. And I took it a little further. Adults were yelling at these children, 8, 9, 10 years old, making 8 cents per delivery, just to give them some responsibility, teach them about capitalism, make sure that they didn't throw the papers in the ditch and run away and get paid. They were yelling at them as if they were Donald Trump. They had Trump derangement syndrome. They were literally doing this. And so Seattle, being so close to Portland, Oregon State, Craig can attest to this, the largest number of registered sex offenders of all the 50 states. Seattle decided that they wanted to give abortions for free for anybody who wanted to come over here, Idaho. You're too conservative. Let your teenagers come over here. We'll pay for it. We'll put them up in a hotel. We'll take them to Children's Hospital. We'll turn them into a girl or a boy, depending on what they want to be. What? I mean, this is demonic, in my humble opinion. Yeah. So I think somewhere around Seattle, the devil said, that's a great place to start, opened it up shop. And some of the other states, believe it or not, have come along for the ride. And of course, California, where I lived for my first 30 years of my life, they were racing each other. Who can out crazy the other on things that the voters seem to be into, believe it or not. That's my point of the door-to-door knocking, and some man would yell at some little girl over politics. They just bought into this, and it became, once upon a time, it was you're a Republican or a Democrat, more taxes, more regulation, less of it, to all of a sudden mission accomplished. You're either with us or against us during the war on terror at the same time as the war on drugs. And now we're into this situation where it's like you're either a Republican and you think Democrats have bad ideas, or you're a Republican and you're a bad person. That's what the Democrats have become, and that's why they're not Democrats anymore. They're Marxist, Cloward Piven people.
I'm getting so far away from politics while being right in the middle of it with what we do. I honestly just don't give two craps about Democrat or Republican anymore. I think it's two wings of the same bird. I'm looking at conservatives and leftism, and even that's crazy. Me, Craig, the deeper I get into this, the less I find out I know. There was a point in time when this country wasn't as diabolically crazy as it is right now. I mean, there was a time, Steve, I think, when probably Oregon and Washington State and all that was a beautiful place to live. And, what happened, in your opinion, Craig, what happened? What turned us in this direction, man?
Well, it's a chain of events, and it is spiritual in its nature, and it'll never make any sense until you learn to look at it through a biblical lens, and then everything makes perfect sense. You'll never be surprised again once you put on your, I don't want to say Jesus goggles, but if you look at it through a higher spiritual conflict lens, so to speak, everything will make sense. You'll see that wicked men and women are serving themselves, which ultimately they're serving the fallen by doing that. And they want wealth and power, and they'll do anything to get it. And so those are the people, those are the quislings that our political enemies are using to help overthrow our United States without a single shot fired. And he just mentioned the Cloward Piven strategy, and that's one of our enemies' strategies: squander all of the wealth through maxing out all the social programs. So just free everything, just pay for everything, just squander the wealth of the entire country, giving everybody with open borders free stuff, and there's no end to it, there's no bottom to it, and just bankrupt everything. And there's a lot of these strategies that they're utilizing against us, man. And one's the Hegelian dialectic. If you realize problem, reaction, solution, every time they want to take more of our freedom, they cook up a crisis and they issue the crisis to us. And then they've already tested enough and iterated enough to where they know what the public solution or reaction is going to be. And if we don't react the way that they want, they'll issue our reaction for us through role players, and they'll say, here's the solution, which means they take more of our freedom and liberty. So American people still don't know that. We've never had one president that stood up and said, hey, do you realize this is the same playing card that they're issuing again and again, and it's working? Because you don't know. I mean, I would love it if we had a president that said, hey, folks.
We had one. We had John F. Kennedy, but they shot him.
Well, yeah, he started talking about the secret societies. He didn't talk about their playbook per se, but yeah, he did say that, that the secret societies are a problem, and they did execute him in public like they did Charlie Kirk. And so I think it's just played itself out since JFK. We've seen them manipulate our nation again and again and again, and it's all ideological subversion. It's all to grind down the United States, to weaken us, to overthrow our nation without a single shot fired. And what do they want? Ultimately, they want global Marxism, which is Satan's politics. And so you have people on the left increasingly turning radical and satanic and utterly wicked. And it's really, the lines are like the two camps are separating.
I would like to say, Glenn,
we're having more conservatives become corrupt as well. So it's demoralizing. But I think we're in the final stretch on the timeline. I think biblically speaking, I think Jesus is about to return soon, because I think all biblical prophecy that needs to be fulfilled before that needs to happen has already been done. So I think we're in very rare days as far as historical timeline goes, and I think we're going to see much more of this, the physical manifestation of this spiritual war, play out before our eyes. I think we're going to witness things with our eyeballs in the coming months that humans have never seen with their eyes, at least not for thousands of years. And it's going to be it's going to be intense. But if you're prayed up and you're read up and you're under the wing of Almighty God, there's no better place to be. So
Well, it's an amazing time to be alive, no doubt about it. And we can look at that several different ways. We can look at it like, well, this absolutely sucks. Or we can say, you know what? God chose me to be here right now and to take part in this battle. Steve, you got something. What's on your head, bud?
Oh, no, I mean, everything Craig said was just spurring memories for me of how this came about in my own philosophies. And I got to say, whether it be Revelations, end of days, like he's talking about, or just another one of the long list of biblical stories of where a empire rises and falls because they left God and lost their way. And then you end up with a John the Baptist in Charlie Kirk. It's just a warning to, if we were going to say God bless America, well, you need to earn that blessing, right? It's not just a given, and we lost it. And part of that was, to circle back to, I think, our topic today, the subcommittee on oversight and investigations, that says a lot. It's a subcommittee. It isn't even the main one, from Biden, said 6.7 million illegal aliens came into the United States. Well, during that, also July 2025, there was a congressional hearing. The DHS Inspector General said 233,000 unaccompanied children who were not properly monitored lost, as Tom Homan said. And he also said about 448,000 unaccompanied children entered the country during the Biden administration. That's 7% of the total. For those liberals, if they listen to the show, I don't know. But for example, in Virginia, over 3,200 children were reported missing this year since January. And in the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, there were 2,100 endangered runaways that were active cases with over 25,000 that they actually resolved. That is a lot of kids that obviously have nobody there to defend them. And so if that's our culture, that we don't even care about our children, that's exactly, if you read your Gospels, what Jesus was saying. Don't kill those kids anymore. That is not, human sacrifice is not what God said he wanted. He doesn't even want cow sacrifices or incense. It smells to him. Stop it. Love each other. That we're not doing that. So, and then of course, where I live, Eastern Tennessee, some as young as 3 years old, they've been sold for sex by their own parents and family members. Channel 8 WVLT said so. So I'm not making it up. Something's really, really wrong when a mom and a dad or an uncle or an aunt or a grandchild can make money off of their offspring, their babies, the millstone around your neck type thing, because the culture says you got to make that money, you got to pay that bill. So we're a long way away from, ask not what your country can do for you, what you can do for your country, because patriotism's gone with the illegal aliens. And the mother, father, apple pie, Americana patriotism seems to be gone. And I don't know if that's because of Vietnam and these people like Nancy Pelosi, who instead of being patriotic decided to be far left communist, or the inevitable evolution of the communists becoming the next step, which would be the Marxists and of course the Nazis. So we are in a situation in our country where we can't get along. We can't negotiate with the other side. They can't negotiate with us. They'd rather see us dead.
Well, and that comes back to what I was going to point out with you, Craig, earlier, is where we are. But let's compare that to 60 years ago, before I was born. Thank you very much. This is where it's diabolical to me, Craig, is I agree with you 100%. This is spiritual, and we can see that it's spiritual. If you're spiritual minded at all, if you know Jesus, you're paying attention, you've kind of got your knees worn out, and you know what's going on, you can see it. Here's the thing that's so diabolical to me is it's been such a slow burn. It started out somewhere slowly, 20s, 30s, 40s. I feel like it really started being kicked in the 60s when there was the free love and if it feels good, do it movement kind of thing. And that slow burn happened over a period of decades to where it's no longer slow. It's in microwave mode. It's changing that direction in a massive way on a daily basis. And it's not scary. We can see what's going on. It's just, dang it, maybe I'm just redneck enough, Craig. It's a little bit surprising to see it every day. I was just in Chicago last week. I've never been in that kind of an environment. And I'm just dumb enough to think we're kind of the same everywhere. It's not the case. There's hot spots around this country.
Yeah. It's surreal to me to grow up hearing what would happen. My parents were strong Christians. They knew the word thoroughly, and they had people from high levels of knowledge and different professions that were strong Christians that would come from all over the world and stay in our home and guest speak at my dad's house on their way to wherever they were going next. People coming through that were getting prepared to smuggle Bibles into Russia behind the Iron Curtain back in the day when they would have been put in the gulag for life if they were caught, things like that. So I was hearing what biblical prophecy, what was going to happen, the end times, but I didn't know that I was going to see it with my eyes. I figured it would be probably after my day somehow. I don't know why I thought that, but watching it happen now, and like with Sweden and the UK issuing out the digital currencies and already moving to mandate that you have to have that. I'm like, wow, mark of the beast system is locking in. I mean, it's here, it's happening. So it's not anything that's going to happen someday. I'm witnessing it right now. I'm like, well, this is going to get intense, man.
I made a joke with my buddies today. I'm heading up to Georgia tomorrow to film a pilot episode for a company, but I made a joke with them today, and then that just hit me. I said, you know what? I think my social credit score was just dinged by that joke. Ha, ha, ha. But it's coming. Yeah. Those kind of things are coming. They're in China right now. It's coming.
This is all being pushed along by my old neighbor, William Gates. Yes, I know. So Seattle spawned another very influential person from, yeah.
Well, you mentioned that people can't get along anymore, and I think there's no coexisting with the manifestation of evil. It's accelerating. It's becoming more overt. I think the wicked are behind on their timeline. They wanted Agenda 21, now it's Agenda 2030. That's because they got thrown back, and there was a warble put in their playbook. So now they're more desperate. They're more frantic. They're throwing Hail Marys and they're making mistakes. And I think that's merciful. I personally believe that God Almighty is helping some of us disrupt their timeline so that they're more behind and they become more frantic and they make more mistakes, just so that we can see that God is real, that he is who he says he is, that the Bible is true. And these people are utterly wicked, as it says, and then we can perceive it and choose. Because there's only two kingdoms. And when you die, you're only going to go one or two places. And so I believe the Father, his love is so deep that he wants everybody to have one last chance, get a good look at it, get a good gutful, and look at what evil really looks like, how it turns into the utter most wicked cesspool and its inevitable conclusion, and go, okay, not that way. Turn and go the other way. Right.
The unleashing of COVID, I think, was a very eye-opening experience, especially for parents. Once COVID all of a sudden hit and we got to see what our kids were learning in school on the Zoom, which didn't exist prior to that. And all of a sudden it was this great, almost like a revelation where I think you're absolutely right. We were given one more chance. If you hadn't already gotten right with Jesus before COVID, you better get right now, because they could do worse next time. So it was as terrible as it was. We're 6 feet apart and you couldn't go to the movies and you had to, mask up in your car alone and all these crazy things that they're still doing in Seattle, because that's how crazy they are. 98% of King County was actually at least one, if not more, boosters. That they're all in over there. So why was I the 2%? I don't know, but thank God I was, because I think that's right. The door is narrow, the road is wide. And that was a test. Let's just say that I think God said, hey, you guys haven't been paying attention to what's going on. Yes, in reality, humans are making them in Ukraine, and we're doing this and we're doing that. We do all these things scuttering along, but they were forced to show their hands early. Who forced them? Yes, Donald Trump, but who was also saved by a bullet by an inch? Donald Trump. So he was being used by a higher power to wake up people who have not been woken yet. And that's why more young people than ever before are going to church. Revivals have been happening all over the country. I'm blessed to be working with folks who are doing the Great American Prayer Event 2026 in March, which will be broadcast by satellite by TBN, which will be bigger than Elvis's 68 comeback special in terms of people being able to see it, hopefully 1 billion, all about Jesus is alive. And the more people who learn that, there are places on earth that have never heard the word before, Southeast Asia, Africa, but they are all of a sudden now more. If I have my numbers right, the fastest growing Christian community on earth is in Nigeria. That's new. So this is our chance. It's like now or never. So like I said, whether it's the fall of Jerusalem 2.0 or whether it's actually the end of days, and he's going to come on his white horse with a sword this time, not with bread, we will see. But and hopefully we'll be alive to do it, because I think the three of us are right with God. But a lot of people aren't. And the ones in Seattle that I'm talking about that are around Antifa, that believe in nose rings and cutting off genitals and kids and all this stuff, they're not gonna have a good time going forward.
Well, and here's the thing we've got to remember, and Craig, you know this, I know this, and Steve, you know this. We're in a battle, and it's not just words anymore, man. That's not just words. People are dying, and if you're going to take a stand, one of my favorite stories is in the Old Testament, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and the king's men talked him into making a statue of himself and creating a law that everybody had to bow down before the statue. And if they didn't, they would be killed. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would not bow down. And, they were told on. And so the king brought them there and said, just bow down before this, or we're going to throw you in the fire. And they said, we will not bow down, but our God will save us. But even if he doesn't, we will not bow down. Y'all, this is serious. The things you're doing, Craig, the stories that you're writing, Steve, the little things that I'm doing, put a target on us, and it's real.
Well, those three guys' best friend was Daniel, and he's the one who put his head in the lion. So Craig, when he's out there in the dirt trying to save some kids, he's got his head in the lion's mouth. I keep writing things, and they keep putting my address out there. I'm doing my part to put my head. Now, those guys had to end up in the fire pit to figure out, is God going to save them or not? Let's see. But we're doing all we can because, we're just three guys.
Yeah,
well, that's where my faith is now. Say it again, Craig.
I know too much. I know my father now enough to where nobody can tell me who he is or get me to turn from him. And so I'm ready for whatever. I know what happened to all the apostles and all that. I don't care. What can you do but send me home to my father? That's it. So I'm here to serve his will, whatever the cost. And I think I'm wired to serve his will when others don't dare. I think that's why he kind of made me without the fear that he designed me. It's probably not. People say that's not normal. Well, no, I've never felt normal.
That's the silver lining of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk went right to heaven.
You know what I mean? Well done, thou good and faithful servant.
Absolutely.
Exactly. I agree.
Yeah. Brother, nobody has ever accused me of being normal. So I think we're probably blood related somewhere. And I'm really not speaking this on our behalf. I'm speaking this on the behalf of the folks that are watching. This is real, y'all. But it's the most gratifying place I've ever been in my life, knowing that I'm on the journey that God has for me. And speaking of that, I need to take a quick break because I need to show the people why I do what I do. It's going to take about 2 minutes. We're going to still be on air, so don't be picking your nose because I'm going to still be able to see you. But we're going to talk. We want to show this for a couple of minutes and tell people what it is, why Glenn Baker's in this fight, and what my mission is. So let me show you this, guys. Take a look.
So I had a 60 millimeter mortar that landed 3 feet in front of me, and so it didn't cook off. And so it technically they would consider it to be a dud, but it wasn't a dud. It had a broken propeller on it. I got pictures of it. I carry with me and stuff. It's about the size of a 1.5 liter bottle. But it has kill radius about 25 meters, 20 to 25 meters. So basically, if that round would have went off, then confirmed dead would have been 20 to 25 meters. Been 31 months since I've been able to stand on even with a brace or being able to take one single step. So it's been 31 months to the day yesterday.
And then God leaned in and he said, you know what? You're going to do a foundation. You're going to be the one to help these boys, and some girls, I'm sure, get to walking again, back on their feet.
It became so real when we physically came here and I physically got to see face to face to that unit. And knowing that, I mean, like I said, it's pretty much like an avatar. I mean, I felt like I, plugged in and we became one, like I was breathing with it, like, I mean, it just incredible. I mean, I can't even imagine, I can't even describe the feeling that I had, but like, it was like deep down inside of me, it's like, you know what, I felt like I can fight again. I really am able to stand again, and I'm like, I can do this.
Like, I guess the sense of pride, like to stand tall, no matter what height you are, not a jab at Glenn, but just to stand, I think is huge. You take it for granted.
This is my mission. This is what God's called me to be here to do, is to help these boys and girls that have gone out and given everything. Craig, I did an interview on OAN the other day, and the reporter asked me, why do you do what you do? And here's the thing. When we've signed that dotted line, when these guys have signed that dotted line, raised their hands right up here and swore to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, and made that oath, these young people have given not just everything, they've given the best of who they are to us, to our country. And when they come back wounded like that, we end up giving them the bare minimum. And God has just shown me a mission where I can help these boys stand up. There's amazing things going on. There's amazing things taking place. So guys, if you're watching this and you've got the capability, GiveSendGo.com/finish this fight. We're raising, over the course of the next year and a half, $15 million to do 100 of these exoskeletons, and trying to convince our government to be embarrassed enough to step up and take over, where I can go hang out with Craig Sawyer out on the beach and get a tan, and maybe go sing a concert or two every now and again. But GiveSendGo.com/finish this fight. Help our warriors to walk again. And I appreciate you boys giving me the levity of being able to take that time for a few minutes.
God bless you for doing it.
Yeah, man. We're behind you 100%, brother.
Well, yeah, I know you are. And Craig, you've been a great friend already in the last year. Thankful for meeting you. Let's talk about what we were continuing to talk about. And let's go into something that, Craig, you spoke about whenever I interviewed you for the movie. And I edited around that a little bit because I was so new to this. I didn't want to cross a legal line, blah, blah. I don't care anymore. So you were talking to me about a year ago about the things that were happening in Nashville, and the reporter that was there helping hide and cover that up. And if I remember right, there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 48 people that were being covered up and that kind of thing. And Steve knows about this because Steve's been thrown into the middle of this too. That's the connection I was telling you about that I didn't know about until a few hours ago. Craig, talk to me about what happened in Nashville. What was that mission about? What were you doing?
Well, we run a sting operation there with law enforcement, a joint sting operation against child predators, those who were actively seeking children for sex online or for trafficking or organ harvesting, whatever they wanted to do to the children. And there was a reporter there that instantly went ballistic when he learned that we'd made our first arrest on a child predator there. This reporter went completely ballistic, and he tried to start interfering with law enforcement. And then he started demanding that law enforcement have their badges and guns taken away. And he started making wild, outlandish accusations about them and trying to halt the arrest. So we got, in 2.5 days, 71 arrests and warrants on child predators and such vile child predators that when the chats by these predators were read to law enforcement, it brought law enforcement to tears, knowing that that level of disgusting violence was shown to children so quickly. So what I learned in the following days and weeks was that, yeah, that reporter is a radical political operative masquerading as a reporter. So he's politically activated, and his job is apparently to make a lot of murders and child trafficking and crimes go away. Inconvenient stories go away. And so he runs a lot of top cover for organized crime around Nashville. So I'm like, well, what's he got so upset about? Well, the assistant chief of police of the police department had been investigating high-level organized crime in that region for 14 years with multiple law enforcement task forces. So what they had mapped out was a lot of these corrupt networks. They were moving hundreds of billions of dollars in real estate loan fraud, and that's how they were doing their money laundering. There was BRICS nations money that they were using municipal bonds to pay out their installed politicians. And
so this was at a government level then.
It's an international crime ring. There was, again, I mentioned BRICS nations funding was coming in, but there's a lot involved, and it goes across the nation, and there's just a lot of information and evidence to that. Well, when the reporter wasn't able to interfere with the warrants for arrests, he went to the state law enforcement agency to help him stop the warrants at all costs. And I'm like, why are they so worried? And one of the cops said, well, there was a child trafficking ring transferred from New York to the Nashville area, part of Tennessee. So if we go do raids and arrests and start arresting all these predators and exploit the data on their phones, we're going to find out who's connected with all the money and all the child trafficking, the organ harvesting, and we'll be able to really unravel all of it. And so they can't survive that. So they begin completely going ballistic, trying to desperately cover everything up. So state-run law enforcement there, TBI, did come in, raided the local police department, took all the evidence of high-level organized crime and all the 70 warrants, and the assistant chief's home did the same thing, botched the raids, urinated in the tub and tracked it all over the house and left a bunch of official documents of theirs all in the house that they shouldn't have left, stole a bunch of stuff that they weren't welcome to seize. And then when they returned everything afterward, months and months later, the things that they did not return and have never returned is the evidence on high-level organized crime and 70 warrants. So those were the things clearly that the reporter reached out to TBI to help him cover up. And that's what the FBI, if it ever gets purged of its corruption under Dan and Cash, that's probably one of the first things I think they need to investigate, because there's a major national security implication to it due to all the BRICS nations funding and the high level organized crime all across our nation that's being covered up there. So we kind of punched a hole in this rancid beast and all of that sprayed out. So here we were, a tiny little nonprofit org that ran a humble little sting operation. We thought we'd get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 arrests, as we typically do in a 3-day op, and all hell broke loose. And the reporter, must have, how do you scream, I'm a pedophile protector, without actually saying the words? Well, watch that reporter, and even people on his own feet are like, dude, you're a pedophile. You've lost it, man. You're not good at hiding your cards and your motive,
Right.
It was intense.
Steve, I don't mean to keep you on the sideline like this, but I'm going to ask another question for Craig. Because, Craig, when we did this first interview for the movie about a year ago, you told me you had 100% arrest conviction record.
Yeah.
Did that kick you in your tail right there?
No, because we didn't get to make the arrest. The warrants were
Oh.
stopped. So everybody that we've arrested has gone to prison and been convicted, except for one now. And that was since that op. This was up in Idaho, but he was a cartel member. So the jurisdiction up in Idaho decided to export him, and instead of prosecute him. So
Gotcha.
at least he's not on our streets.
Well, Steve, you live in the middle of all this, and as a journalist, you've had some interesting things that I just found out. I don't even think I know or even understood exactly what we talked about earlier. But Craig, he's been thrown under the bus by these folks too. Let's talk about that, Steve. What's happened?
All right, so let me frame it like this. I've been here in Tennessee for 3 years. I've had this podcast for 4 years. I get in a situation where I'm making my bookings, I'm calling people, I'm getting all the stories because it's always an interesting guest. It's not Steve's show. I always have a guest on the show. And so I had the Speaker of the House of Tennessee, Cameron Sexton, booked to come on the show. And in the morning, he had to cancel for whatever reason. We don't have to go into the details of that. But I start scrambling, calling around. So I finally get a guest who can make it because we go live and, the show must go on. So I get a woman who is on the city council of Little Franklin, Tennessee, who ultimately went on to run for mayor, but at that time was an alderwoman. And it happened to be the same week as the Covenant shooting, if you remember that story, where the transgender gal went back to her elementary school and shot it up. Yeah. Killed 6 people, 3 children and 3 adults. And on the show, I said, "Oh, are you going to go to the funeral of the one of the 3 adults who is from Franklin?" And he said, "Oh, I know all about that." And all of a sudden, she starts going into the story that she knows behind the scenes from this tip. Well, okay, the show's wrapping up. I got to go. Wow, thank you. I'll have to have you back on sometime. We'll talk about that. God bless the people who passed away, and on with, goodbye. And then the next day it goes to the Brian Wilson show, being filled in by a host named Matt Murphy, who's actually become a friend. And he yells at her and says, "You're lying," and all this kind of thing. And it just goes out of control. So I only talk about that story to remind everybody that this town in Millersville that Craig was talking about has had a lot of turnover in their government organizations. Everything from the fire chief was doing fake IDs so that the guys could go work overtime on Broadway as bouncers, to I think they were on their 3rd chief of police, and Sean Taylor, who was this guy that the reporter we're talking about called the conspiracy cop. So I call the conspiracy cop because I want his story, because that's what I do. So I want all sides of the story. I get a call back from the chief of police who says, "I'll come on." I said, "Great." So he comes on, tells the story. On my Rumble page, I get a note for everybody to see. It's still there, from the gal who says, "Hey, I ran that op. I'd like to tell my side of the story." Come on, sister, let's do it. So I end up getting her. I get the guy who was running him. I met Craig through, DMs, trying to figure this all out. And then the whole world goes crazy because that Channel 5 guy decided to blow it all up. And as of this day, as far as I know, every one of those predators, or let's just say alleged predators, are free to do whatever they want to do because they are not in jail. They are not outed in the public. They are nothing other than a spike story. And that's a big number. I mean, little town, 70, holy smoke. So I wanted that story. That's what I do. So now the reporter and I are related because I've been named in the same, suit that blew the whole thing, even though I had Mr. Morris, the chief of police, on the show first to tell the story of Millersville and all this. So it's very confusing. It's very weird. And there's, like Craig said, more layers and behind the scenes things going on than I'll ever know. But it was the first thing that I ever really covered when I got to town to be at the time it was called the Mill Creek View, Tennessee. Fascinating. And to this day, it's just a big mystery. So it goes from Covenant to Millersville to the busted police files.
My understanding is, and tell me if it's right, or if I'm right or wrong, if I can pick this up, is you've been subpoenaed, or you've been something. You've gotten some paperwork from a court to show up and talk about something.
I'm named with the reporter and a whole bunch of other people from Yes, the offended parties. Let's just say. I don't want to say too much because I don't even know. It's very confusing. My lawyer said, "Why did they name you?" I said, "I don't know." But my 3 shows are listed. I'm like, well, then subpoena the shows. They're right there. They're public. You don't need me. But that's the way the legal. He said it was a shotgun suit where they'll just go after everybody to try to figure out how this is. So Channel 5, the reporter, me. I don't know if Craig's in there. I didn't see his name on there.
Palpable. The panic is palpable, man. Look, I think it's noteworthy to point out that this little police department, Millersville, had at one time a police department that, what I understand, was completely corrupt. So the city council, and they flushed it completely out and hand selected cops, or they brought in a chief and an assistant chief, and those guys hand selected cops that from around the state that they trusted, and they stacked their department with straight cops, and it was a small department, like 15. And I think it was because you had a straight department who ran a good faith op and didn't notify the corrupted local establishment adequately enough, then I think that's the reason we got 70 warrants and 1 arrest in 2.5 days, is because the corrupt didn't know to protect themselves from it. And so I think that's why there was such a fear that ran through Nashville. They were thinking, oh my God, who all do they have on that list of warrants? And that's why you saw them flail and completely lose their composure, trying to desperately stop those warrants, man. And I think that story is far from over. And I think it's God Almighty causing the wicked to flail and panic and tip their hands so that everybody can see, my God, look how fearful they are. And their behavior, if you just watch, it's indicative, it's revealing. And so I am curious to see how this ends up playing out, because if any federal law enforcement agency comes in good faith and looks at this, there's going to be a lot of people in the TBI and Channel 5 getting arrested and put away for a very long time. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if truth ever comes out, or if it's just allowed to be perpetuated and kind of smoothed over and the cancer is allowed to remain, because it's concerning to see how much organized crime is around Nashville because of the corruption, and it's allowed to continue. The harm is allowed to continue. The poisoning of people with all the drugs and the trafficking and the organ harvesting, just the trauma and the murder. Just
Glenn, can I, if I could,
I do hope that that justice prevails and that all of it eventually comes out and gets seen. I really do. I pray for that.
And that person I told you about at the beginning, who was an alderwoman, ran for mayor, that Channel 5 had done a big hit thing on her to get rid of her, and she ended up losing the mayor's race, but then ended up turning up to be the next in line to try to be city manager of Millersville. And so the same players came back again to squash the whole thing, because her campaign originally was talking about a lot of things that Craig just listed. So she, as bad as she may have been in her personal dealings and all the stuff that came out about her, she was helping potentially, we don't know for sure, but the cop that we talked about was the original tipster of the Covenant situation. So there's just this entire web of just insanity that I just fell into by inviting those 4 people on my show.
Yeah. Well, guys, we're running a little bit low on time. There's a reason why I wanted to bring you two together today, is to show it on a local level, which Nashville is a big little city. And the things that you said, Craig, is one of the things that makes me sad is find the money, and that's where the corruption tends to gather. And the music business, whoo-hoo, it's like the Hollywood business, man. There's so much money there that corruption has taken over. You're never going to see Glenn Baker on national radio getting into a top 10 song. Why? Because I don't play that game.
Yeah,
and I'm not going to spend it. Say it again.
It's the same. It's the same in country music now as it is in pop music, and the whole Diddy party culture and all that. That level of control, those manipulation techniques, have now saturated country music in Nashville. Sadly enough,
it is sad. Here's the good news, though. Because of men like Craig Sawyer, because of men like Steve Abramowicz, because of men like Basil Boz, because of those that are out there that are exposing this atrocity, Brother Craig, I'm going to tell you, the first time I heard about it, I literally got sick to my stomach. It was so hard to take in and so hard to believe. But I do believe, because of the work that you've done, and there was a time I thought, man, I'd like to go ride with Craig. I don't think I want to go ride with you, my friend. I want to let you do your warrior thing, and I'm going to do the good-looking country music star thing.
All right.
And I'll let you handle the bad guys, because I'm not as tough as I say I am.
I got to do what the Lord tells me, man. I don't want to be in disobedience. I don't want to fail him.
No, but because of you doing that, there is a movement that's seeing what's going on now. And you've said it yourself, the only way we stop this is to expose it to the point where people cannot ignore it any longer. Yeah. And that exposure is ugly, my friend. It's ugly. So Thank you for what you're doing.
I had Basil Boz on my show, and I don't even know how he sleeps at night. I mean, I also have had truckers on my show that have turned in other illegal, undocumented, no-named drivers who were basically hired to bring kids from Florida to California through Arizona and all the rest. Like, it is, we all saw that movie of Sound of Freedom, and they were very purposeful keeping it out of America. And so, yes, it brought it to the forefront of people's awareness, but they didn't realize how much of it is going on right here, because we're the biggest consumer of it. Yeah. So what Craig's doing, and people like Basil Boz and other people I've had on my show are doing God's work, literally, because those children have nobody defending them, certainly not the Biden administration. So Tom Homan was here in Franklin, Tennessee, and cried because he literally said they brought a girl out of the back of a truck who, was dead, and it was his daughter's age. And he couldn't believe that humanity would do this. And well, that's right, because they're not human. They're demons. And the end user is as bad as the trafficker, is as bad as the person who kidnapped so-and-so from Guatemala. So I hope that someday people will just say, you know what, I don't really want to be the end user. It's just so bad. Yeah. And then the market will just go away like cocaine.
At the end of the day, it's evil incarnate, and we're seeing it. It's being exposed. Craig Sawyer's at the tip of that spear. Craig, any final words? Where can we find you, and how can people support you?
And just be encouraged. It's all God's. These things must happen. Everything's a lesson. So do not be fearful, no matter what you see. Draw closer to King Jesus, and you'll be better off no matter what happens. You can find us at v4cr.org, and all of our social media should be linked on there with little icons and tabs. And that's pretty much what I care about now. So I would say that's the one-stop shop for me.
Okay. What about you, Steve? Anything, any last words?
Yeah, until I go broke, you can go to heartlandjournal.com. There's no commercials. We are not sponsored by any of the bad guys who will tell me what to say or write. So it's open, and we just cover the news that the mainstream won't. You won't see it in the LA Times. You won't see it in the Wall Street Journal, but I will cover them if I see them doing something outrageous. So check in. We got a free newsletter every day, Monday through Friday, with news from the Heartland. And then, of course, every new show with voices like Boz. And we've had just really an amazing blessing of over 400 episodes, library of people who are lovers of truth and will not have their voices heard unless they come to me. So we were blessed to have them. So check it out. Hope you like it.
Awesome, guys. Well, I will tell you folks, next week, I don't have anything scheduled, so I'm going to be scheduling some people. We're going to have a good show Tuesday. I want to find out. Send me in the comments. Do you prefer the 3:30 p.m. show over the 7 o'clock p.m. show? It seems like we get more traction in the afternoon. If you'd like to see that, give me a DM, send me a comment, let me know. But otherwise, understand Glenn is out searching for truth, searching for warriors like these guys here to bring to you so you can find out directly from the source. Because, man, it's hard to know just watching the media what's true and what's not. So I want to bring the source of truth to you, and these guys are it. Y'all want to stay backstage in the green room and hang out for just a second? We're going to finish this up, but understand Uncle Glenn loves you. This is why I'm doing it, and I'll see you on the other side.
Forward, halt, left, 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 right, your left, 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 right.
Arkansas boy with a lifelong plan took the oath like his old man, then turned around proud and shook his hand. L.A. kid stood right behind, took a deep breath and signed on the line, while tears streamed from his mama's eyes.